What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my great co-hosts, Fede Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hanna. And guys, we're all back. It's been a while since we've had all four of us together. Obviously, life has been such a thing that we have to manage through, especially during this time. Obviously, we're heading into the end of the year. Obviously, Christmas is coming up, and it's been quite a wild year for all of us. Obviously, going back to what we really went through in 2020 and now going back into normality in 2021. Well, let's see what happens to a little variant if they want to ruin the party. But obviously, let's talk about what's been going on the pitch with the Paraguayan League coming right to the very end. We got a big clash happening on the weekend between two sides that are really going for it, that are neck and neck and could indeed and will indeed decide the title. We'll talk about the Copa Paraguay, how one team who's had one of the worst years that they've had in their history, how they can redeem themselves yet again to close off really a horrible year, if they can even do that against a really tough side that they are facing, and many other things going on. So let's go straight to it. Let's go all the way to Paraguay itself, where I'm assuming that, you guys are getting your panetones ready. You guys are getting everything all decorated for the holidays. Here, it's been starting for almost a month now. But Fede, how are you, man?
Yeah, it's not even December yet, and I already have the tree up. I don't know what's going on in this house. Hi Roberto. Hi to Maria. Hi to Ralph. Yeah, people are kind of anxious about Christmas, about the end of the year. It's kind of that time of the year, right? But we still have football around us, thankfully, to distract ourselves. It's great to be back, Roberto. It's great to have all four of us here for one of our last shows of this year, because we are coming to an end of the season here in the Paraguayan League, and we have so much to talk about, so much to follow this week, actually, and also obviously to share it with our audience, everything happening with our Paraguayan teams and with the players, also not only on the local league, but even looking beyond that, because we have, for instance, Gustavo Gomez going to a back-to-back championship with Palmeiras in the Libertadores, the captain of the national team, and obviously of the Verdão, the Palmeiras team also, which is just having such a great time with his club. Credit to him. So happy for him again, even though we haven't seen that Gustavo Gomez in the national team. It's great to see him win another championship and lift that Libertadores, which is something that we don't see every day, right? A Paraguayan with another big team like Palmeiras, and it's happened for 2 years in a row, or actually 2 times in the same year, because that other final happened this year also. And we have Copa Paraguay coming to an end. We have the final being played in just a couple of hours. We had the third spot already being awarded to Libertad. And this upcoming weekend, I mean, talk about a game, talk about it coming down to just one game, right? We'll have our champion of the Clausura, the team that qualifies also for the Libertadores, be it Olimpia or Nacional. They have to go at it. The run for the last spot also for the Sudamericana between Guarani and 12 de Octubre. I mean, so much is just going to be going on in this last week of games. And that showdown between Guarani and Cerro Porteño, it's just got so much to talk about. It's going to be played in Guarani home ground, and people are already trying to get their tickets. It's a hot ticket. It's not going to be easy to be there, but thankfully I got my spot saved. So I'm going to be there on that last game. And obviously we're going to talk about it today as a preview, and we'll talk about it next week, obviously, once we have our next champion of the Paraguayan League, Roberto.
Absolutely. And not just what we're talking about in South America. We still have some Paraguayans that are actually playing here in the United States in MLS. We have the Portland Timbers heading to the conference finals of MLS that will play also on Saturday against Real Salt Lake. NYCFC are still playing at the time of recording. They're playing the New England Revolution. So we'll see if Jesus Medina will be playing in the other conference final in the Eastern Conference. So we'll see what happens to those Paraguayans, as we hopefully can see one of them lift a trophy at the end of the next month, of course, in MLS. So, I mean, it's definitely a lot to talk about. And Ralph, I mean, you look at how really it's been a while that we've really had a league decided on the final day. The fact that this game was going to happen regardless of how both these teams was positioned, it kind of feels like destiny in a way. And I'm sure many people will have a lot of bragging rights to talk about whoever comes out as the winner on the weekend.
Yeah, that's right. It's trying to think back. I mean, 2015 we had a one-off final, a finalissima, because Cerro and Olimpia were tied on points. But I'm trying to think of a game where the top two played off against each other going into just the end of the regular season. It hasn't happened for a long time. There was one year where they tried to set up that the Clásico would be the final game of the season. But if I remember rightly, by the time they got there, it wasn't, Cerro and Olimpia fighting for that particular match. So this is quite a unique situation. It's really interesting how it came around as well, because Cerro have not been top all season until this weekend. So going into the final weekend of the season, they're top for the first time. So this helps Guarani, maybe not, but Guarani are not actually kind of the favorites that could slip up, in that they're the underdogs and they're going for it and they have to win. They can't try and play a 0-0 draw, which is what happened in the first round of games. These guys played a 0-0 as both teams were a bit scared, canceled each other out. This will be a totally different match on Sunday. So really excited about that. And then the Olimpia Sol game for the Copa Paraguay final is going to be an excellent one as well, because what Sol de America managed this weekend by winning is that they're safe from relegation. So they don't go into this midweek game thinking, we have to do something in the league. They're like, let's go for it. We can go all out for the final. So we've got two cracking games this week in Paraguayan football.
Not to mention, and go to Maria here to close it out. I mean, obviously for Olimpia, after what they've been going through all year long, and I think really just the instability has been going on and off the pitch. I mean, we even saw it on the weekend when Olimpia lost to Libertad, how Roque Santa Cruz was booed by the Olimpia fans and how many of the players were also booed as well. Heading into this game, I mean, this is the one to really save their honor. And it kind of reminds me of what happened last year when you think about it, where Olimpia kind of, were in a bit of a stretch. They had those issues going on from an administrative point of view, not as bad as what happened this year, but they ended up winning the Clausura around this time last year. So kind of deja vu again for Olimpia, heading into a situation where despite all the chaos that's been going on and off the pitch, they're still here to possibly win a title to close off the year.
Yeah, that's true. And hi, guys. I'm happy to be back once again. We missed you all. But it's been such a crazy roller coaster for Olimpia, coming all the way to the end of the Clausura and seeing themselves, pretty much last spot in the table, yet they're fighting for a cup, for the Copa Paraguay. And it's just amazing to me. I think they really stuck together, I guess, to see what they could end up, to see if they can get something out of this year. So I think that I'm happy for them, because they've been fighting for so long. It's been a crazy, like you guys have been saying, crazy semester for them. All the drama that they've been going through. But you know what? If they win, well, they have to win, not if they win. They have to win. It's a win-win situation for them. They have no other option. Like you said, they were booed. The fans are so tired of this whole situation. So for them to be here and have this chance once again, it's really great, and they shouldn't lose this opportunity.
No, absolutely. And then obviously being the club that is Olimpia, you go in to win every title available, no matter how good or how bad the club is. The history gives you that kind of advantage, and obviously a lot of pressure, for anyone that wears the shirt. So obviously a lot to go on. And like you had said, Ralph, as well, for Sol de America's side, that until this weekend was battling relegation, are now safe. Now they're looking into a situation where they can surprise a lot of people and try to ruin Olimpia's party yet again, and what has been a terrible year. So, a lot is going on with four teams, Cerro, Guarani, Olimpia, and Sol. They're all playing for something. They all have a bunch of storylines, and I'm definitely excited to see what's going on. But let's obviously talk about what's going on. Obviously, the big game happening over the weekend, Cerro against Guarani this Saturday at Dos Bocas at the stadium of Guarani. Obviously, going into the weekend, yes, both sides were still in a position where it could have gone to a draw on the final day, but we saw how Cerro Porteño ended up beating 12 de octubre over there in Nueva Olla, and Guarani drawing Guarani, giving Cerro Porteño now the advantage of basically going into a situation where they cannot, that they can't lose. You know, the fact that, and Fede, I'll go to you on this one, because for Cerro's case, okay, yes, they are going to Guarani's ground. They're going into a place where Guarani typically have a good record. You know, you would say that would give Guarani the advantage because of the different circumstances that are there. But the way that Cerro has been playing and the way that everything had just happened over the weekend, it can go either way. But I think Cerro kind of have the advantage, don't you think?
Yeah, it is a final. I mean, it's just one of those games where anything could happen, right? I mean, everything is going to be important. Every little detail, how every player is going to perform. You know, the ref also, the big calls that they need to make. I think everything is going to go into this game, and everything is going to be important just because of how well these two teams have done during the season. I mean, Guarani, they had the first half of the season all for them. They were pretty much the only team during the first games that was just killing it, and that really had the level to say that this was a competitive team, that this was one of the teams that was going to play for the title, and they would manage to get to this last week with the opportunity to go against Cerro. Yes, they lost the chance to have the advantage, the big advantage maybe with just a tie. They could have just, if they would have beat Guarani with a tie against Cerro Porteño, they would have been champions. That situation is out of the hands. Now it's on Cerro Porteño's hands because because of the results that happened over the last weekend that you just said, Roberto, especially with Guarani stopping Guarani, which is something that I've actually talked about a couple of episodes ago, that I actually thought that one of these two teams was going to lose a couple of points before the clash of this last week, and it was Guarani, unfortunately for them, but you could actually see it coming. Guarani lost effectiveness, and everybody was scoring on this team before, and the other day you just saw them nervous and not being able to solve the game, which is totally what I'm not seeing from Cerro Porteño. I mean, Cerro Porteño is just it's just being so confident, and they are actually solving the problems, because Cerro also had a big problem with 12 de octubre. 12 de octubre was playing really well, and they had their strategy, and they played like they did all year around, and it was a big important game for them too, because they're trying to get to the Sudamericana. So, you know, they really went out to it. They tried to beat Cerro Porteño, and they were actually pretty close. And let's remember that Cerro Porteño at a certain point of this season, of this tournament, the Clausura, was at the 7th spot, was at the 7th position. I mean, this team was really down there, and they managed to make a run for it. This is a great run. I think it's been 6 games or 7 in a row now, and you know, they managed to figure it out. Not just the players that left, but also I think the main key, the key to this whole situation was getting their best players back to their best performance, right? And Claudio Aquino coming back, getting the goalkeeper right on, just like they needed. You know, these players have been huge for them. John Fernandez, I think Ralph mentioned it last time, 11 clean sheets. 12 de octubre just broke that just last weekend. But I mean, they've been so hard to beat. And not only on defense, they're strong, they're also very strong on offense, just like I was just talking about. Claudio Aquino, Boselli, Robert Morales, they just have so much firepower, and they have solutions also on the bench, which is something I didn't see from Guarani. Guarani had a short roster, and they kind of struggled on the second half of the year, but on the second half of the semester of the tournament, actually. But we'll see. It's just one game, and it's going to come down to this. I think it's going to be on the little details, and it's going to be a totally different match. But it's going to be played on a small stadium. Let's tell that to people also. I mean, there's only going to be about 150, 200 fans from Cerro Porteño. Cerro Porteño is going to feel pretty lonely in that stadium. It's going to be mostly Guarani fans there.
It's a strange stadium for for our listeners that don't know it, because they only have stands on the sidelines, on the touch lines. And one is particularly tall. I don't know, it's like 3 tiers almost, and very steep. But what they don't have is behind the goals, there's no stands, because one side you have the casino and the other side you have like the training pitch, which backs out. So you usually get like lots of people kind of hanging around there because there's big fences. But in terms of the actual atmosphere, it's really packed on those two sides. And like Fede says, the Cerro fans will just get a small section in the corner, which is where the away fans go. And this is very interesting that Guarani have fought for this to play it at the home stadium. They would have made a lot more money if they had moved it to the Defensores del Chaco, which often happens in these big games, especially when it's a team like Cerro or Olimpia that are visiting. But they've gone for it. They've gone for playing at Dos Bocas to try and get that sporting advantage. So that would be very interesting. And then to Fede's point, I think this is a real game of, it's almost a game of attack versus defense, because we spoke before about how good Cerro's defense has been. And in this particular game, they know if they don't concede, they win the title, because a draw is enough for them. So it will be interesting to see if Chiqui Arce sets himself up a bit more defensively, which isn't his typical style. But knowing that Guarani have to come for the win, they don't have any other option. And what we're seeing with Guarani is they're leaving lots of space behind, which players like Claudio Aquino, Carrizo, Morales, if he starts again, these kind of players can really exploit that space behind. So it'll be interesting to see how Chiqui Arce sets up. He got it wrong for me against 12 de Octubre. As Fede was saying, he found it hard to break them down, and he played with Carrizo and Aquino and 2 up front, Boselli and Morales, which he doesn't usually do. But that made Cerro really narrow, and you were playing a 12 de Octubre team that plays with 3 at the back or 5 at the back. And so the whole middle of the pitch was just it was too crowded, it was too congested, and that certainly suited 12 de Octubre. And in a way, they got bailed out in part by Claudio Aquino's penalty. I mean, I think it was a penalty, but it was a little bit against the run of play just starting that second half. But after the goal, Cerro were much better. He brought on Enzo Jimenez, who played a bit wider on the right-hand side, and I think that helped them a lot. But let's see how he decides to set this up against Guarani. Is really interesting. And for Guarani, there's another couple of stories. There's so many, narratives around this. You think of Guarani have players like Marco Cáceres, who scored the equalizer against Guarani. He's ex-Cerro Porteño, of course. You have Josue Colman, who used to play at Cerro, came through the youth sides. He's playing there now. So you have some of these, these storylines as well of players that maybe want to prove a point. And then you have Jubero himself, the coach of Guarani, who has only won 1 title. It was with Libertad. And he's come so close with Guarani so many times. I think he's been runner-up 3 times, if I remember correctly. So it's like, he must be wanting this so much to have, to finally win with Guarani, which is the whole reason he came back to the club and chose them. So a lot to go on. I think it will be a really good match because of the way it's set up. A draw doesn't work for one of the teams, for Guarani, so you can't have a tight game. They're going to have to attack somehow. They're going to have to try and be clever and break down the Cerro defense, which has been the best in the league.
It's going to be a really interesting battle. I think, like you had said, and, Maria, I want you to jump in as well to talk about this, because not even to mention, obviously, going back to Chiqui Arce, what a difficult year it's been as well for him. Obviously, the death of his son a couple of months ago as well. And, certainly it clearly had affected him. And I think surely a title like this would definitely boost really a lot of enthusiasm in his life. And I think, of course, winning championships at Cerro, obviously he's had his history at previous clubs as well. I think this would probably be the most bittersweet championship that he's ever won as a manager.
Yeah, I wanted to mention just that, Roberto, the fact that this year was very difficult, like you said, for Chiqui Arce with the death of his son. And, as a Olimpia fan, I'm going to say, like, typically you would say, I don't want Cerro to win, but in this case, it's been so hard for this team. And I really felt that, and I think that has a lot to do with how Chiqui Arce has been managing as well. He's probably putting all his effort, probably made a promise to his son that, listen, I'm gonna make a promise and I'm gonna win this for you. So there's definitely a lot of heart put into it. And on the other side, you have Guarani that has been so long. It has been so long for them that the last time that they won the Clausura or Apertura, I think it was 6 years ago or something like that. So for them to actually win again after so long, it's also such a great moment for them. And it's just going to be a battle of emotional times, and it's going to be great. Yeah, they won back in 2016. So Guarani. So I'm really looking forward to this, what it feels like a final.
Yeah, that's really it. It really is a final for both these sides. And, obviously we'll close it off here because, certainly at the end, we'll see what happens. But I do need to get these predictions from both you guys. Obviously, Cerro Porteño are going for their 34th league title in their history, whereas Guarani are going for their 12th league title. So, Fede, I want to go to you on this one. Who wins the 2021 Clausura?
Put me right on the spot, and I have to go to the stadium, Roberto. And
there you go. Yeah, no pressure.
Listen to us, and no pressure. Right? I gotta walk right in between the Guarani fans and the Cerro Porteño fans. It's been so tight so far, and Cerro Porteño, I think they do have the favorite, just because of the results, just tying it, they win it, but. Guarani's been waiting for this for such a long time. I think they're going to show the best out of it. And, whoever loses is going to take it pretty bad just because of how tight it's been. I mean, Cerro Porteño almost coming back, and they feel like they kind of earned it. And if Guarani loses, I mean, they're going to take it pretty bad because they had a pretty big advantage, and they'll lose it at home also. So it's going to be kind of that final also, just to see how the loser takes it also. The fans, the players, it's going to be a very emotional game, really. And obviously, just like Roberto was telling me, nobody likes to lose a final, but in this case, there's a lot of stuff in it also. I'm going to go with Guarani. I think they're actually going to pull it off. I don't know how, but because of that great defense that Cerro Porteño does have, and John Fernandez, I mean, he's stopping everything against Dos Octubre. He was like the best player up until Cerro Porteño got the penalty. He was stopping absolutely everything. One-on-one, you just couldn't get around the ball around him. So and people are talking here. This is probably one of the best goalkeepers that we've seen on the Paraguayan game lately. Even though we've seen some great goalkeepers come from outside of the country, from Uruguay mainly, but Popi Munoz, we have Silva on Libertad. We've had great goalkeepers coming to the Paraguayan league lately, but John Fernandez has really surprised me. But I do think Guarani is going to manage to solve the situation, and then win at home. They'll celebrate it with their people, and they'll just finish it. And for even if Cerro or Guarani lose this game, I don't think it's the end of the world for either of these teams, because they're going to go on. Chiqui Arce is going to go on with Cerro Porteño. He's going to get his team ready for Libertadores next year. And the same thing for Fernando Jubero. Even though he has this stigma on him that on the last games he usually loses these kind of tournaments, I'm going to put all the pressure on him. I'm going to put all the pressure on his team. And let's see if Guarani can take it.
Fede goes with the Alinegro on this one. Maria, I mean, you have your Olimpia allegiances as well, but certainly these are two rivals at the end of the day as well, not just for Olimpia, but obviously between each other as well. A lot of factors going into this one. Who do you feel is going to be the champion by the end of the weekend?
Oh God, I hate doing this, but I'm gonna go with Cerro just because I guess like I mentioned earlier, I'm going with the more sentimental value of the fact that Chiqui Arce has really put all his effort into this, and I think he's really gonna do it for his son, and I think that the players know this, and they're probably doing it for the same reason as well. And they also have been playing really good. The fact that they've been unbeatable for the last 7 games we said earlier. that speaks volume. They came up all the way from the bottom all the way to the top. They finally made it to the top of the table. It only took 18 weeks or so, but I really think that Cerro Porteño has been showing that they really can win this again. And besides the fact that they've been great, I think that they've been putting all their efforts to show the players putting all their efforts for Chiqui Arce.
It's definitely going to be an emotional ride for him, win or lose, but I think it's going to be very much a tight affair. And Ralph, I mean, certainly you could break the tie here. Well, depending on my prediction as well. But the last time these two faced each other, it ended in a scoreless draw. Do we see something similar happening on the weekend, or do we see the home fans over there in Dos Bocas celebrate?
A really hard one. I think what I do think is, in a strange way, it does favor Guarani, the fact that they have to go out and win. I think this is more their natural style, to try and play attacking and try and win games, outscore the opponent, because that's what they're good at. Before the season started, we did all our predictions, and I remember saying that Guarani could surprise, and I didn't think Cerro would be up here, because I thought Cerro were going to get kind of bogged down with Libertadores, and when you're fighting that tournament, this doesn't always happen. They would sell Villa Santi, so I wasn't sure they could replace him. Arzamendi as well. So maybe I'll stick with that original prediction, and I'll go for Guarani as well. I was also just checking, the one time Jubero did win the league with Libertad, I was at that game. I remember it was also Libertad were at home. They were playing Independiente that day, but they were only 1 point ahead of Guarani. And Guarani were playing, of course, at the same time. So they kind of knew if they slipped up and Guarani won, then they could lose the league. And they did win that game 2-0. And it was actually very easy. Obviously, it was a different proposition. They weren't playing facing off against the number one team. But Jubero, for all these critics that say he doesn't do it in the big games, he has. And he's also won in Brazil against Corinthians with Guarani. I mean, he's in these one-off matches, he's picked up some really good results. So he's against probably the best in Chiqui Arce. I think these are the two best coaches we have at the moment. I mean, Garnero is up there too, but if you look at how these two have done it with different clubs, I think it's two of the best going head to head, but I have a feeling Jubero and Guarani can just snatch it.
Well, I think obviously all of us here are undecided. There is no majority in this one, because I think it's just such a tight game. Anything can go. There's so many storylines. There's so much to play for. For my take, and I don't want to be biased as well, obviously, for my team, but I do think that Guarani playing in this position, I think, they missed a big opportunity to not get that win over Guarani over the weekend. Having said that, though, playing at home, Jubero playing in these type of games, these kind of one-off finals, we could say it's a final, obviously, because they need to go out and win this one. But I think Cerro Porteño has just been so good defensively. Like you said, Jean Fernandez has been so good behind the sticks. And, I think just because it's going to be such a tight game, it's going to end that way. And I think because it's going to end that way, then I see a draw happening. And with that, Cerro Porteño lifts the title. So it's going to be a tight game regardless. And I'm definitely excited about what's going on. Certainly, I think whatever happens, we're going to have a deserved champion, be it Cerro, be it the Guarani. I think both these sides have fought all the way to the end to get to this game, to this final, basically, and demonstrating why they are the best two teams in Paraguay with the two best managers in the country. I think whatever happens over the weekend, we will have our deserved champion. So best of luck to both these sides, and we will talk about that next week to see who lifts the Clausura to end the year. And as we switch gears to what's going on the other side with the Copa Paraguay happening at this time of recording tomorrow, two teams that are facing two different scenarios. I'll go to Maria on this one because we had mentioned at the beginning of the show, this is, of course, something that Olimpia has to go out and win against the Sol de America side that, in a way, are playing as well for kind of pride, a Sol de America side that also are not historically known for many titles. I think they've had, 3 titles in their history of like the first division. They've won a couple of titles in the second division, but for Olympia's side, this is really, the pressure is on them because of just such the horrible year that they've had, the pressure between what's been going on administratively, so many coaches going on, leaving and coming, and players possibly leaving. It's kind of a last dance for basically these sides, and I think Olimpia have to go out there and go out to win and to close out with. Let's be real, it's been one of the worst years in their history.
It has been one of their worst years in history, like you said. And like I said earlier, it's a must-win situation for this team. It's been a terrible year. They really have nothing else to play for. So if they don't go out to win, I don't know what else they can do, because it's that's it. That you only have one option. And I think they have a good opportunity to win this game. They have a lot of players coming back. They have I believe Derlis Gonzalez coming back. They have who else was that was playing? Alejandro Silva, I believe. So they have good players coming back. So that's a good thing for them. And they had some time off as well, so they can focus on this game. They do have to play after that the Clausura, but I don't think they're really worried about that. They're playing against I believe it's Sol de America. No, Nacional, sorry, that's Copa Paraguay. They're playing against Nacional, so I don't really think they're worried about that. I think their whole focus will be with Copa Paraguay. So yeah, I think it's going to be a good game. I really don't see them losing this, despite their terrible year. I think, and the fact that they haven't won a game in a long time. So I think that they really need to focus on putting all their effort into their offensive situation. Their offense has been really off lately, and like they said, they are still playing to qualify for the Libertadores. So that's another situation, another thing that they're playing for. But I'm just looking forward to finally see something good coming out of this year, out of this semester for Olimpia, and let's hope for the best for them.
It's the second time for Olimpia in a final route. They played a final against Guarani a couple of years ago in Pedro Juan Caballero. They lost by penalties that time to Guarani, and for them it is kind of a revenge in that sense, just because they are a big team, and all the big teams kind of want to win this Copa Paraguay, especially these first editions. Cerro Porteño hasn't done it either. So Olimpia is going to try to win their first title of Copa Paraguay, even though for these big teams, this cup, they played it with most of their alternative players, even their goalkeeper. It's not their starting goalkeeper, Alfredo Aguilar. We're seeing Olveira, the Uruguayan goalkeeper, starting most of this cup, and in other positions also we've seen other players played, because for the big teams, for the first division teams, this Copa Paraguay, I wouldn't say it's been easy, but they try to give those players game time, and they try to use those players in this cup, and it actually worked for them just because they got to the final. Olimpia got there pretty easily, actually. I don't remember a game where Olimpia had trouble trying to get to this last game, and I think it's going to be really important for them this week, not just this game, but what Maria was talking about, playing against Nacional also during the weekend, and especially because if they win Copa Paraguay, they get a spot at the Super Copa, which is a new cup that we're going to play here at the end of the year. That spot is earned by that spot is going to get the team that wins the Copa Paraguay, and they're going to have to play against the team that makes the most points out of the year. That could be Libertad, or that could be Cerro Porteño. So then you're thinking, if you're looking at the scenario, not far away from now, Olimpia could be champions of the Copa Paraguay and going up against Cerro Porteño in a Super Copa. That doesn't sound that bad to end the year for Olimpia, even though they've gone through so much stuff, like you were saying, Roberto. It could be just a way to look at the future a little bit brightly, and it could be good for them. I mean, this week could change the momentum of the whole year, and especially looking forward. That's looking at it from the Olimpia side. Then we can talk a little bit about Sol America, which I think they are on a great run, and they actually found their spot. They actually found their style, their team also. But for Olimpia, it could be a very important week, Ralph.
Yeah, that's right. Olimpia is having a historically bad year, as you mentioned. So in the league, they've lost 12 games in the season, which is the most they've ever lost. They were beaten by every single rival in the league, which is the first time in their history, and that's over 120 years that's ever happened, or well, pretty much 120 years. So on that side of things, everything's looking really bad. But as Fede is saying, there's still silverware to be won. They could win this cup that Cerro has never won, which I'm sure they will enjoy. There's still the chance of Libertadores if they were to beat Nacional at the weekend. So there's a lot to play for. This particular tournament has been a real breath of fresh air for Derlis Gonzalez, because Derlis Gonzalez he struggled a lot with injuries, but he scored 2 against Resistencia in the last 16. I think he scored one of the goals against Guarani in the quarterfinals. He scored the goal against Libertad before it went to penalties, and he scored the winning penalty in that penalty shootout. So he's really enjoyed this particular tournament. So that's a player to definitely look out for. And what we know about Olimpia is that the quality they have is superior to Sol de America. The quality they have is much higher than their league position. What they've been struggling with is as a unit, as a collective, players have maybe found it difficult because of not being paid, because we know that's been happening. The players haven't been paid on time. There's been lots of changes in the back, which we're talking about at the moment. It's another interim manager who's in charge. So there's been that kind of things, but then you can put all that behind you for a final, I think, and it's a one-off game. They have a pretty strong squad there, like we're talking about. I'm just looking at the lineup here. I mean, yeah, you have pretty much everybody's fit to play that you would want. What Julio Cesar Cáceres has been doing is playing a couple of the younger players. We saw Fernando Cardoso play. He's a guy that had a stint in Portugal. He's back at the moment. You have Hugo Quintana, scored at the weekend. He's a really interesting midfielder. He was at Palmeiras for a bit in the under-20s. So they have a lot of young talents as well, and they have people fighting for places. So I think tomorrow they have a really good chance, and I put them as favorites as well. But that's not to take away from Sol, who like Fede says, has had a really good season. They've saved themselves from relegation. They're very organized under the coach Pompido. They've discovered a couple of gems with this guy, Francisco da Costa, the Brazilian striker, who's joint top scorer in the league. And then they have some of that experience because they have Rodrigo Rojas, who Olimpia decided they didn't need at the beginning of the Clausura. And they let him go because they kept people like Jordan Santa Cruz and Richard Ortiz and other Orsusa they brought in as central midfielder. But Rojas has been showing his quality and playing very well for Sol, and he will certainly be motivated tomorrow, I think, to try and show Olimpia what they're missing out and what they let go, because it was definitely a case of him being told by Orteman at the time that they didn't need him. It wasn't that he wanted to leave specifically. So there's definitely some motivation there for Sol. And of course, this is their first big final since 1998. The 1998 Apertura. They used to play finals in the old league system, and that was the last time Sol found themselves in a final, which they didn't win. So it's been 23 years since they get a shot at silverware.
It's going to be
this is a very well organized club, Roberto. Let's tell that to people, right? Because Sol America is maybe a small club from a small city in the outside region of Asunción, the capital, but this is a team that actually works very well in the youth leagues, even though you don't find that many young players on their roster right now, just because of the fact that they actually tried to not play for relegation in the second half of the year. That's why they brought in so many players with experience. That's why they have so many players available. They actually have 2 or 3 players for every position. They actually packed the roster for this end of the year because they didn't want to have anything to do with the relegation. They've been on the first flight for quite a while, and they're actually a very well organized club. They have a president that has a lot of money, which I think is leaving football. I think he's leaving Sol de America after the end of the year. So they might be playing for him also, right? For the whole project, for all the money that he's put in the club, all the investments. I mean, Sol de America has been a club that has grown a lot, maybe not on the fan base. They don't have a lot of fans that are probably going to be tomorrow in the Defensores del Chaco for the final against Olimpia, but they are a very humble, very good club. And like I said, organized. They have really good players, Roberto. Let's not take our eye out of this team.
They've always been a tricky side to face for any of these teams in Paraguay. And obviously, administrative, they've been very much well run. Obviously, they don't have the silverware to go for it, but you could say that they have been very much a much more stable club than a lot of the teams that are playing in the Paraguayan league. So yeah, go ahead, Ralph.
Just to point out a couple of players people might not know came from Sol. So you have Cecilio Dominguez, actually came through Sol de America. Bruno Valdez as well. He came through Sol de America. Then they both moved to Cerro and ended up making the jump there. Also people like Jose Ortigosa, Pablo Ceballos. This is going back maybe a bit longer, but it's a very well organized club that produces players above the size of their team. You know, they don't produce as many big players as Cerro, Olimpia, Libertad, Guarani, but considering the size, they're really well organized.
Absolutely. And also Justo Villar also was a player that started there at Sol de America before making his career. So yeah, definitely a lot of respect is given to Sol de America. But I think regardless of the respect, it's still a final. And Fede, I'm going to go to you on this one again with these predictions. Who lifts the Copa Paraguay tomorrow night?
I got the first ticket today. I'm gonna go with penalties. I actually want to see penalties tomorrow on this final, and I think it's gonna be that kind of game. It's gonna be really tight, and I actually see Olimpia taking it. Olimpia by penalties. They probably learned their lesson against Guarani and 2 years ago, and they might take it this time. But I do think Sol America is gonna make it a run for it. They're gonna make it a battle. They have their strikers really hot right now. Javier Toledo, the Argentinian. They have a Brazilian up there with Da Costa that has been one of the players of the tournament. That's been just such a new player, and I think nobody was waiting for him to be this hot, scoring as much as he's done, and he's actually got his contract signed for a couple of seasons, for a couple more seasons with Sol de America. He got his contract re-signed, so I think Sol de America is very stable right now. They're gonna give a run for it, but I do think that it's gonna go to penalties, and Olimpia will take it.
It's going to be a very tight one. Maria, do you side with your allegiances, or do you feel that maybe you're not convinced as of this moment?
No, I'm definitely gonna go with Olimpia. I think that, if it was a final against any other team, like big team, I mean, like Cerro or Libertad or Guarani, then I probably would have my doubts. But this time around, I think that Olimpia really has to, like I've been saying this whole time, they just have to win it. And if they don't win it, then I don't know. That's a different topic. That's another. Let's see how we do in the next in the next episode. If they do lose, then I'll put my thoughts together for that. But as of right now, I think that they will win it, and probably I would say by I'll go for a 2-0 for this game.
Definitely 2 finals to play for Olimpia, really. Just this game, and obviously on the weekend playing against Nacional, where they could definitely see if they're going to qualify for the Libertadores. So a lot at stake.
From the money point of view, Roberto, it's more important to qualify for the Libertadores. The Libertadores is going to give you a lot more money, and they really need it.
And if they can get the best of both worlds and win both of them, then certainly that just factors even better for them. So they definitely need to win both these games, not just the one happening tomorrow. But Ralph, I mean, we've got two Olimpia sides, two people voting for Olimpia. Do you want to make it number 3 for Olimpia?
Yeah, I think I'll go number 3 for Olimpia as well. I like the idea of penalties. Something sticks with me there. Although the last time I was checking, these two teams did play a knockout game last year, because remember we had the playoffs for the Clausura last year, and Olimpia actually ran out. They were winning 4-0, and I think Sol got a couple of goals at the end to come back. But Olimpia really found that game easy. Although I was just checking the 11s while you guys were talking, and while this Olimpia team has stayed fairly stable, you have a lot of players that were in that game. The Sol de America side from this time last year is almost unrecognizable. So I don't think it's a fair comparison in that respect. But I do think Olimpia, looking at the experience of the players as well, I think they will have enough. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a penalty shootout, because traditionally these games, as you get to the later stages, have been very, very tight.
Always a final. Games are always tight in these type of affairs. So yeah, I agree. I would not be surprised to see penalties, and I'm actually siding on that. I'm going to go with Fede's prediction on this one. I do see a penalty shootout happening, and I think we're going to make it anonymous here and say that Olimpia will be winning their first ever Copa Paraguay. I think they have the experience. I think they understand so much is at stake for them, that maybe that mystica that always has them in their history always comes up in these type of games. It's always been done. We saw it even last year with what a horrible year they've been through, and they still ended up winning the Clausura. But I think in a situation like this, I kind of would have to side for Olimpia on this one. So obviously a lot to play for, I think, in many of these games, obviously happening between 4 teams in Paraguay, with Olimpia, with Cerro. And Maria, you can go in as well if you want to say something.
Yeah, I just want to point out, is this the first time we all agree that Olimpia is going to win something this time around?
I think ever since the show has started, yes, that is right.
That's good.
Which means it could, which means it could indeed factor the other way, given our luck.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's going to be very much a very interesting week for 4 teams here in Paraguay. Obviously, Olimpia playing for really pride. Sol de America looking to win something after a long time. Cerro also wanting to play in the way of pride, and Guarani also wanting to win for the first time in such a long time. So yeah, a lot of things going on. I'm excited for this one. We're obviously going to be talking about it next week to see what's going on, and I think this is the good way to close another great episode of Guarani Vision. So for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, Ralph Hanna, and Maria Britos, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.